freedom and desires. How to get free from your desires. Free from desires? Na 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 na. It's been stuck in my head. It's been stuck in my head. Okay, we're talking about freedom and desires today, and what Tantra, or at least my understandings of Tantric teaching, speak into these things. Hi, my name is David. I'm creator of Mind Yoga for Clarity and co-creator of Sex.Prayers. You can find out more about me over here, but I'm going to get straight into it. This idea of freedom, what it means and what it speaks into regarding our desires, and how we can find freedom from our desires. I've got notes here because I've prepared. I'm a prepared individual. First thing I'm going to say is radical freedom is the goal of yoga. Radical freedom is the goal of yoga. So I'm going to speak into how you can find freedom in your life. If that's interesting to you, then let's get into it. Where I want to start, though, is this step-by-step and then logical conclusion. So there are 3 points that, this is all from Tantra Illuminated, by the way. A beautiful book by Harish Wallace, which speaks into all of these teachings, and I kind of just want to muddle my way through them as a way to better understand them and share them with you. So in Non-Shaiva Tantra, the definition of God is the unbounded light of consciousness. I've spoken into this more in other videos, in previous videos in this series. This way or this way? I can never remember which way. You can go check those out. But let's just stick with that assumption that God is the unbounded light of consciousness. The second step then is everything that is known to exist is an object of experience. So everything that we know, everything that we experience is done so through our own consciousness. Nothing that we know of exists outside of that. And as a result, then every experience is by definition pervaded by consciousness. Because if God is the unbounded light of consciousness, God is the singular consciousness, everything that is, was, and will be is, in this school, one consciousness, which is expressed in all of the ways, and everything that we experience is done so through this consciousness. That my experience, whilst it can be perceived to be different to yours, it's just a different vantage point of the one unbounded light of consciousness. It's viewing through different pairs of eyes, but at the same thing. That's kind of what that is saying. The implication of this is that everything, as it is already, is as God as it gets. You can't get more God than currently is. That you, me, this pen, this paper, this mic, it's all expressions of the divine consciousness, this one unbounded light of consciousness, which means everything is an expression of God. Kind of just let that sink in, because it's pretty deep when you think about it, and the implications of it are pretty big as well. Whoever you are, whatever you're experiencing, is all expressions of God. It's all as God as it can get. You can't get more God than what you currently are or what you currently experience. This speaks into what I'm going to talk about later, this idea of peak experiences that we can chase, and has become prevalent in chasing spiritual highs. I used to call them yoga high when I was teaching a lot. People used to come to classes, and I used to be one of them, to get the yoga high, that feeling that is experienced, the kind of like an altered state. And we speak into this in Sex.Prayers. We see sexual exchange as kind of tantamount to a medicine journey. It's this experience, peak state, if you will. But it's not that any of those experiences, that the yoga high, that the spiritual high, or any of that is more God than anything else. Is the difference between having clarity and obscuration. So what Harish spoke to in the book is, just because everything is as God as it gets doesn't mean everything is as free as it gets. And this idea of freedom is something to speak into. So what do we mean by freedom? I used to muse about this a lot. I had people in my life who had this idea that freedom is getting to do whatever you want to do whenever you want to do it. And for me, that is not the definition of freedom that I abide by. Partly what I abide by is freedom being sovereignty to take responsibility for whatever it is you choose to do whenever you choose to do it. And what the teachings speak into for freedom is not wanting the moment to be any different than what it is. Freedom is not wanting the moment to be any different than what it is. Because when you don't want the moment to be any different than what it is, then you're no longer struggling. You're free to fully surrender into the experience of the moment, whatever it is. When you're wanting the moment to be different, that's when you're grasping onto an idea of something that isn't. Because if you're wanting the moment to be different than what it is, then you're desiring for something that isn't true. Now, that doesn't mean that things can't be different or won't be different. The abiding truth of reality is change, this vibrational aspect of reality, this continuous cycle of expression and dissolution, creation and dissolving. That's how reality is. It's just this one big wave, this one big vibration with all of these myriad, infinite number of different vibrations. But wanting the moment to be no different than what it is freedom. And when able to fully accept the moment, oneself, one's experience, for whatever it is, however it looks, whatever it feels like, then that opens up to the inherent joy to be found in that. So I want to speak into the difference between joy and pleasure. So this idea of inherent joy, or ananda, and pleasure, which is the sensory expression. So one is experienced by the divinity that resides within us. I like to call it the God spark, or your essence nature, as it's referred to in tantric teaching. That is the light of consciousness that resides within all of us. And this is the unlimited aspect of us. And then there's the limited expression of us, which is the human side of us, if you will, this tangible, limited sense of self. And that is what is sensitive to pleasure and the enjoyment of the experience. Difference between pleasurable enjoyment and contented bliss or inherent joy. Two very different things. One is unbounded consciousness, the other is limited experience. So when finding full acceptance of the moment, not wanting the moment to be any different than what it is, therein lies the ability to be free. And then the byproduct of that acceptance, of that freedom, is the inherent joy that resides within it. And because of this, ultimate freedom is not an experience or a state of mind. How could it be? Because an experience or a state of mind is something that can change. It's subject to change. By definition, it's impermanent. And so it can't be where the joy is or where freedom is found, because the moment you experience that thing or you have that state of mind, it will change, it will go, it will dissolve once again. And if we make the mistake of believing that the peak experience or the state of mind is the joy, then we can end up chasing that high. We're chasing peak experiences, chasing yoga highs, chasing sexual gratification, chasing monetary gain, chasing all of these things, all these peak experiences, because we believe that to be a fuller or higher or better expression of God, of Godness. But that's actually the spiritual pitfall. And as a result of that thinking, it can lead to spiritual ego, spiritual grandiose, and then that leads to, well, in my terms, spiritual Hollywood, and all of that seeking rather than a focus of the radical freedom, which is actually the goal, this not wanting the moment to be any different than what it is, the inherent joy to be found in the complete acceptance of the moment, irrespective of what it is. And now that's not to say that you can't enjoy those pleasurable experiences. This is something that Tantra actually speaks into. It's not about transcending the limited human experience. It's about infusing the limitless inherent joy that's freely available to us, found through the radical acceptance of whatever our situation is, into the limited sensual experience of our human essence. It's the fusion of the two. That is the tantric way, or the tantric path of, it's Turiya Tita, beyond the fourth. It's the infusion of the limitless into the limited, and getting to enjoy the human experience fully because of the acceptance and awareness of the inherent joy that resides within, the freedom that's available to us at any moment by simply fully accepting the truth of our experience. Kind of spoken into that pleasurable experience, however refined, cannot be more divine than anything else. And Ananda is the byproduct of deep surrender. So the difference between contented bliss and pleasure, that when we mistake the goal of spiritual practice for being the byproduct of being in the state of, in the liberated state, then we can become fixated on seeking the byproduct rather than the actual essence of seeking the seeking the byproduct rather than the product, the thing that produces. That's where I wanted to go with that. So it's kind of like, I'll put it this way, it's chasing the high rather than enjoying the experience. It's needing to fixate on the orgasm rather than enjoying of the sex. It's having the focus on the goal rather than the journey. And because the experience of joy can be pleasurable, there can be the conflation. And it's possible to become fixated on the outcome rather than the experience. And then this speaks into desire. What are you making the desire of your spiritual practice? Is it the radical acceptance and freedom found through fully surrendering into the moment, whatever it is, and as a result, the joyfulness that comes from that? Or is it you're seeking the outcome, which is the inherent joy, and becoming fixated in that? I see it a lot with people who get addicted to medicine journeys of doing medicine. It's the same as the yoga high and the sex high and the money high or whatever high. Getting fixated on that because it's the belief that, oh, this is a transcendent state and this is what I should be seeking and striving for, and this is what I should be experiencing in life, and everything else is just not good enough, or it's tainted, or it's not good. That's a mistake, at least in my understanding of tantric path. Is no, chasing the high means you've gone lost in the source. You've gone lost in the byproduct rather than the producer. Understandable, because being in a joyful state, being in that blissful state is yummy. The distinction in tantric path, my understanding is, it's how can you find that joy, that blissfulness, that yumminess in everything that you're doing. That is radical freedom. Because when you can surrender into the moment and fully accept it for what it is, then you're no longer grasping for it to be something that it's not. And as a result, that invites that experience of bliss, that experience of contented joy, the joy of awareness, the joy of presence. And when you can find that, then it doesn't matter what situation you're in. It doesn't matter what experience you're having. It doesn't matter what your life looks like. You don't have to struggle anymore because you're no longer grasping for something. You're no longer wanting the moment to be any different than what it is. When you can fully surrender into that, then you're free. And there's joy to be found in it. And that's how you know that you're in it. Because when you're experiencing that joyfulness, and if you're not experiencing that joyfulness, then a part of you is still holding onto a story. A part of you is still holding onto a desire for the moment to be something different than what it is. It's said in tantric teaching that all mind-based suffering is the result of our inability to see the truth. So when we can find radical acceptance of our situation, then we can find the joy, even if it's unpleasant, even if it's sorrowful, even if it's grief-stricken. If you can find joyfulness, if you can find contented bliss, the the essence of joy, even in grief, even in the darkest of situations. It makes me think of Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning, was concentration camp survivor. And, you know, the most harrowing of situations anyone could probably find themselves in. And because of being in that situation, he found this essence of freedom. This is where his infamous quote, and I'll butcher it and paraphrase it because I'll do my best to remember it verbatim, but something along the lines of, the last of the human freedoms is our ability to choose how we respond to any given set of circumstances. And that is speaking into this. It's the choice. You can choose to want the moment to be different than what it is, or you can accept it and fully surrender into it and find that sense of freedom that comes from that. And this is why the goal of the path is truth, not happiness, because happiness is fleeting, it's impermanent. But truth, the truth of what is, that is where freedom lies. If you can, it's full acceptance. It's fully surrendering into the moment. And as a result, freeing oneself from struggle and finding the joy in that. Happiness is an emotion. An emotion is transient. It's going to change. And if you're putting your freedom into an experience such as happiness, then when the happiness goes, which it will, then what? You'll be lost in feeling unfree again, because you've conditioned your freedom into something that's fleeting, into something that's changing. And so putting your freedom into something that is unchanging, which is the inherent joy found in the freedom of acceptance to the truth of what is, then you can always be free. You can always be joyful. And then you can enjoy those moments of happiness and accept those moments of sadness and find the divinity in it all. Infused in it all is the divinity, is the light of consciousness, the joyful awareness inherent in our being. And then this speaks into desire. I want to speak into this quickly. This idea of desire, this idea of wanting, the challenge of desire is, for a lot of us, it can be an idea of needing something external to us to, in essence, kind of complete us, to feel more complete than we are feeling. The truth is, you're already perfectly whole. And so anything external to you can't add to you, can't add to your divinity, because you're already divine. You're already that infinite, unbounded light of consciousness. This isn't to say you're not allowed to desire things, you're not allowed to want things. It's just having the difference of perspective. It's recognizing that whatever it is that you're desiring, whatever it is, that thing that you're wanting, whether it's the house, the car, the woman, the man, the job, the money, the pleasure, whatever it is, attaining that thing doesn't add to you. That thing then becomes a vehicle to express a part of yourself that was already there. And when you realize that that part of you has always been there, always will be there, then it doesn't matter if you get the thing or not, because you have the ability to express that part of yourself. You have the gift to express that part of yourself. And when you know what it is that that thing represents, then you can begin to express that part of yourself before you even have it. And in a way, this kind of speaks into the manifestation kind of law of attraction, where you begin to attract that thing to you because you're vibrating at the same frequency as it. And so it's no longer having to strive towards it, it comes to you. So if there is something that you're wanting, know that that's okay, and know that that doesn't complete you. It doesn't give you anything that you're not already. It gives you the means to express that part of yourself that's already there, that's already within you. It's the difference between wanting to express something within and the misplaced belief that that thing outside of you will complete you in some way. That thing outside of you is impermanent. Again, it's subject to change. If you get the girl, you get the guy, you have it for a while. But if you put your freedom and your joy and your bliss in that thing, when it's no longer there, which it won't be at some point, then you're back to feeling unfree again. You're back to feeling despair again. And it's not about not being able to have those things. It's about the enslavement to it. It's the attachment that we have to the thing. It's believing it to be something that it's not. Have the car, have the woman, have the man, have the home, have the thing. Enjoy it. And don't believe it's the thing that gave you freedom or gave you joy or gave you bliss. Know that that was already there. And then when that thing goes, it doesn't matter. Because whatever it is that you have is still with you. You can find another way to express it. Another vehicle, another tool through which that part of you can be expressed. Value the thing. Like, this is the idea in tantric teaching. It's not saying that you can't have worldly enjoyment. It's not that you can't enjoy worldly pleasure. You can. You're encouraged to. It's part of being human. It's why we have this human experience, to have these things, to enjoy these experiences, to enjoy these pleasures. Don't become attached, so attached to it that you forget that the divinity is already within you. That you are that divine spark of consciousness. You're already as God and as whole as it gets. And how amazing that is when you fully, truly, and continue to surrender into that. And it's not easy. You know, we have we're designed to have an inherent leaning towards over-attachment to mind and to ego and to stuff and to things, and we're then programmed and conditioned and encouraged societally, culturally, to over-identify with all of that stuff, and we forget about the inherent divinity that resides within us. And so the path, the practice, is one of remembering. It's one of returning to that essence, nature. Continually returning to that essence, nature. It's kind of like dipping the tea bag, continually dipping the tea bag into the water until the water is sufficiently colored with tea that it's so concentrated that you can't forget it, that you can fully taste that essence. But it takes practice, it takes time, it takes, I was going to say effort, but effort I feel like has a negative connotation. Effort, I feel like implies struggle, but it can be an enjoyable process, an enjoyable effort, if you will, because it's so rewarding and so worthwhile, and it's why it's the goal of yoga, this sense of, well, primary of awakening and then liberation, continuing on the path to embodied freedom. And for me, it's the difference between knowing it and living it, or knowing the path and walking the path, or knowledge and wisdom. Knowledge being what's known and wisdom being embodied. You can understand something conceptually, but until it's lived through you, it's become a part of you. You've become so I don't want to say stained, but stained with tea, so enriched with the flavor that even when you wobble, which you will, you return to the path. And it's not about falling off the path, I find. That's inevitable. It's about how quickly you return to it. And you have the ability to. You have the freedom to. You're free to choose. It's about whether you actually want to, and what it is that you're willing to do to continue walking on that path, even amidst the challenge. And the thing is, we have this built-in sat-nav, if you will, this built-in homing beacon. When we're experiencing suffering, when we're struggling, that's the internal self-writing navigation system letting you know that, oh, you've become overly attached to a story that isn't true. Which is great, because now you get the opportunity to course correct and refocus and return to the inherent joy found through the radical acceptance of the moment. So that's how to be free from desire, really. Find freedom in the desire, rather than not feeling like you're not allowed to have it. Recognizing that freedom is inherent to you, freely is available to you at any moment. It's choice to accept the truth of what is, or continue to be enslaved by a story of what isn't. And recognizing that the desire is really an expression of something within you already there, rather than a grasping for something external to you, because that thing is impermanent. It's always going to change. And if you're constantly seeking something external, you're constantly chasing. You're constantly going for the next rung of the ladder, the next thing, the next achievement, because that's the thing that's going to get you there. If I get more of that, then it'll spill me over into godness, into joy. It doesn't. Because that thing's already there. And you can recognize it and accept it and reside in it. Then you're free to move and enjoy and have desire be an expression of you, because you're perfectly whole already. So there it is, freedom and desire. If that spoke to you in any way, if it revealed something to you, if there was a part that stuck in your mind, then feel free to share that in the chat. Feel free to message me. Feel free to reach out if you want to know more. Feel free to go and check the other videos in the series where I speak into some of these ideas a little bit further. And I look forward to joining you on this continued journey of imbibing in the essence of tantric teachings and infusing it into the everyday life that we get to enjoy. Enjoy.